I had assumed that if somebody was giving me that kind of news, then they would do some counseling first. But there was nothing of the sort that happened. I didn't see any indication of sympathy, and I didn't mention the fact that I had two brothers who had died of cancer. His response was that, well, with a Gleason score of 8/9 out of 10, and with that background, I don't want to give you much hope. If I were to ask my clients right now that I've been diagnosed with this kind of cancer, which these medical people are saying is stage 4, what would they say to me? The answer also in my mind was very clear. They would say to me, it's not so much what happens to you, but rather how you choose to respond. As a life coach, I had begun to put together a program that I called Connecting with the Leader in You. So I said, well, why don't I then develop this program on myself? Challenges come into your life not so much to destroy you, but to help you to grow. And so for the treatment itself, we strengthen my immunity, we strengthen my body physically. Then after that, radiation therapy is very important for our patients to also realize that their mind is a very key factor in their treatment. I found that the element of gratitude has been key and continues for me to be key.
Greetings, seekers of ancient wisdom. We are back again to talk about something very, very relevant. Today on our planet, cancer is rampant. So many people are getting diagnosed with cancer. It's become like a plague in a way. The rates of cancer have increased drastically over the last few decades. So to talk about cancer and how you can defeat cancer, I actually have a very special gentleman here. His name is David Pasipanodya, and David had been diagnosed with prostate cancer quite a long time ago, I think 12, 13 years ago. And David managed to overcome that cancer by a very unique method. He managed to change his mindset. David, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deepak. A pleasure to be here.
So, David, you can start off. We want to hear about your cancer diagnosis, which was around 15 years ago, and what happened then and how you got through it. Ladies and gentlemen, David also has a book, which I'm going to leave a link to. You can buy this book on Amazon and a couple of other places, but it's called Winning Attitude. So this is a book that David wrote about his prostate cancer experience and how he got through it. But David, on to you. Maybe tell us about that experience and how you got through it.
Well, in fact, it's just over 14 years ago. It was on the 1st of March in 2011. And I remember very clearly how it all started. It was 5 o'clock Sydney time, because my wife and I were living in Sydney at that time, on that 1st of March. And I walked into my urologist's rooms. I had gone for blood tests, and the results had come out. This was my first encounter with the results. I had to see this urologist, and I got into his office, into his room, and before I sat down, he said to me, "You have prostate cancer." And of course, you can imagine I was absolutely shocked. And I wasn't expecting that at all. I momentarily lost my balance and I found myself groping for a chair in front of me because I knew I was standing in front of his desk. So I found a chair and then sat down and then said to him, "What does that mean?" Um, and then he started to explain. He actually took out um, a prostate cancer kind of model and started to show me, plastic model started to show me how this whole thing had happened. But he said to me that this cancer was aggressive and possibly stage 4. And he said because they had used also, besides the PSA, they had used what they call a Gleason score. And on a scale from 1 to 10, the higher out of 10 it is, the more aggressive it is. And so he said mine was 8/9 out of 10. And so you can imagine I was even more shocked, I was even more scared, I was even more petrified and speechless completely. Um, and so for a week, for almost a week after uh, that encounter with my urologist, I could hardly sleep. I 3 4 hours a day, a night of sleep was very good. You know, a lot of things were going through my mind. I was devastated. I was scared to death. In fact, I thought about death quite a lot because I don't know what gave me that certainty that I was going to die. Maybe it's because I had 2 brothers who had died of cancer, and and um, I probably saw myself, you know, as the next one standing in the queue, in the cancer queue, as it were, and waiting to die, and my time had come now to die. Um, but it was a horrendous kind of experience for those 6 days. And then on the 6th day at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was lying in bed, of course, wide awake, staring up at the ceiling. Um, I started to ask myself some questions. And I was saying, well, what's happening here? What am I doing here? Um, over 15,000 kilometers away from home. And they are telling me I've got cancer. What, what is it? Who am I? What's happening? You know? And as I asked myself, who am I remembered something. I remembered that, in fact, I was a life coach because I was always interested in the personal development field. And I had worked with a lot of people before going to Australia on personal development issue. My background was in education, but I left education, formal education, and went into personal development. And so um, in Australia, I became a life coach. I got an Australian life coach qualification. I was a coach. I was doing part-time coaching because I was working. And so I had some clients, quite a few of them. Some were overseas in Canada because I was doing my coaching also on the phone or online on Skype. And many of my clients were coming back to me and they were saying that, you know, David, you really have made a big difference in my life. You helped me to look at my challenge, at my situation in a very positive way, in a very different way, especially when you were saying that in this life it's not so much what happens to you, but rather how you choose to respond to what happens to you. you know. So when I remembered that in the dark of the night, I said to myself, wow, that's very interesting and that's very powerful as well for me, because I then realized that from the moment I was told I had cancer, um, I opened the door of my mind for fear and allowed fear to just, do whatever it wanted with me. And I had all these scary dreams. In fact, for that week, I dreamt myself dying and being buried at least twice, if not three times, you know? And so my mind was just on that mode where I was absolutely scared and I could only see death. And I also realized that um, when I was given the news, I was not sick. I had gone for just regular health tests. In fact, I just become an Australian citizen, and and so I had access now to their medical um, aid system, and they've got a very good system. And so I said, let me have all the tests I can possibly have. And so I, when I remembered that, I said to myself, if I've been allowing fear to run my life from that moment of the news up to now, what am I choosing to do from now onwards, now that I'm conscious of it, now that I'm aware of it? And I said to myself, well, what about if I choose the very opposite emotion or sentiment to control the way I'm thinking? Because I had unconsciously allowed fear to, to control my thinking and eventually my behavior, my feelings, all my other feelings. Now, what about if I choose the opposite of fear, which to me at that moment was faith? What about if I choose faith and I use that to focus on whatever faith means to me? Because in that context, faith meant to me that I would then begin to cultivate and plant the belief that it was possible for me to overcome the cancer. It was possible for me to go through my treatment and be able to come the other side on top of the situation. It was possible for me to consciously influence my thinking as I go along this journey so that I'm thinking positively rather than the way I had subconsciously allowed the fear to control not only my thinking but my feelings, and it was controlling my behaviors as well. And as I said earlier on, I wasn't really sick at the beginning, but at this time I was beginning to feel unwell, you know. So I decided, well, this is an opportunity. And of course, I think for me in the field of personal development, I knew what it meant. I knew that if I was committed, I knew that if I disciplined myself, because in my coaching sessions with my clients, we talked a lot about discipline, how important it was to discipline your mind, the way you think, in such a way that you, with time, become aware of when negativity was coming in, and then find ways of getting back to a positive way of thinking, and then focus on that track.
So, David, before you continue, I mean, this is a really good background. So, you were in Australia, you had just become a citizen, you went for maybe free or subsidized medical tests, and the doctor did the test, and you were not expecting anything because you did not feel any pain in your prostate area. Maybe you did not have any symptoms, but he dropped the news on you that you have a very aggressive prostate cancer. And I want to also highlight that this was not a fact. This was a proxy test, right? You said they've got a PSA value that they look at, and they have this Gleason score, which are proxies, right? Which is like using other information to determine whether you have a prostate. It's not a fact at that time that you had the prostate cancer. But I wanted to really understand, what comfort did the doctor give you? Did he give you this impression that you're doomed and you're going to die because you have this aggressive prostate cancer? Because it sounds like to me he didn't give you any comfort that, don't worry, David, this is easy to treat. We have a great track record, of treating so many prostate cancer patients. You don't have to worry about this at all. But it seems like he didn't give you any of that comfort, because for the next 6 days, like you said, you were just engulfed in fear. You thought about your two elder brothers who had previously passed away from cancer, and you were saying you were next in the queue. And, before you move on to how your mindset changed, I just wanted to talk about the doctor. Did he give you any comfort or any idea of how you were going to treat this, and, anything about not having to worry too much?
In fact, it was a kind of a surprise, if not a shock to me, because remember, I'm coming from the background of personal development, counseling, and coaching. And I had assumed that if somebody was giving me that kind of news, then they would do some counseling first, kind of, pre announcement kind of counseling, and explaining to me, and but there was nothing of the sort that happened. He didn't. Even when he saw me groping for a chair, I didn't see any indication of sympathy, indication of, hey, don't worry, maybe these are just, there's nothing conclusive about anything. But the impression that went on, of course, he explained how prostate cancer develops. As I said, he was using that model, that plastic model. But he did not. He did not. And of course, later on, I understood that in the medical field, I think, I don't know, probably now that situation has improved. But in the conventional world, medical doctors were not really trained about counseling, about the importance of counseling. And so I later on understood that, and that helped me to let go, because I was very upset with him for some time. But I later on had to let go, because I said to myself, if I'm to heal myself emotionally, mentally, and that kind of thing, I cannot harbor feelings of resentment and anger, even in that situation.
Did he give you any idea of like how long you were likely to live? Did he give you the indication that you're going to die imminently? Or did he give you the indication that this prostate cancer is uncurable? Like, I'm just trying to understand why you had so much fear after that test result.
I think I did mention in my conversation with him that I had heard, because he was now asking about my history, my family, and I did mention the fact that I had two brothers who had died of cancer. And so his response was that, well, with a Gleason score of 8/9 out of 10, and with that background, I don't want to give you much hope, you know. Um, so, so I think that in a way also made me feel more insecure, you know. And as a result, I I didn't emotionally uh, feel comfortable for quite a while until, of course, that experience which I explained to you earlier on.
Excellent. So let's move to this experience because this is really the changing point and how you manage to change your mindset and attitude towards this illness that you had. And you said you remembered that you were a life coach and you taught other people to use their mental abilities and to change their attitude. And you decided, well, I can do the same for myself in this situation. It's not what the situation is, but it's how you choose to respond to the situation. And I think the first thing you said in your book is you came up with 8 keys. I'm just looking at your book here. You came up with 8 keys to help you. And your first one was that I am unique. And the second one, I am my own best friend. And that sort of started you on a mental journey of changing your attitude to everything around you. Because you mentioned in your book as well, in the beginning, like for instance, you were expecting everyone to stop and drop everything that they did to come and help you. You were expecting your wife to drop all of her obligations. I think she was studying for some course at the time. So you expected her to drop everything and just come and support you through your illness. You expected the same from your children. But unfortunately, you realized that they also have lives and they also needed to move on with their lives, and they couldn't just always be at your beck and call and just worrying about your health. So it was very interesting how initially that was your expectation, but as you empowered yourself, you let go of that expectation of other people. And I think you also mentioned when you saw yourself as sick, then other people saw yourself as sick as well. They just saw you as a walking corpse until you changed your attitude. So that was very interesting. I just want to talk about the beginning of how you changed. What is the first thing you changed, and then how that took you on that journey?
Well, in fact, when I remembered my clients and what they said to me, I said to myself in my mind, if I were to tell my clients right now that I've been diagnosed with this kind of cancer, which these medical people are saying is stage 4, what would they say to me? And the answer also in my mind was very clear. They would say to me, Mr. Coach, remember, it's not so much what happens to you, but rather how you choose to respond to what happens to you. And perhaps isn't it time, Mr. Coach, that you started coaching yourself? And that coaching yourself actually is what I caught on to. And I said to myself, so I can actually coach myself. Of course, I'm a coach, right? Um, I've been coaching other people, and they've come back to me saying, I really helped them. I made a difference for them, a positive difference. So I can coach myself as well. So I said, oh, what about if I coach myself? That's when I remembered that as a life coach, I had begun to put together a program that I called Connecting with the Leader in You, you know, and which I'd given those 8 keys. So I said, well, why don't I then develop this program on myself, use it on myself, as the kind of guinea pig and find out, because I believe that these ideas, these keys can make a difference. So I said, well, let me use these keys on myself. So literally, I became my own coach. So I started to focus then on those keys. Um, and of course, the first one for me was about identity, about who I am. Um, and that's where the uniqueness came in. I'm, you know, uh, God's highest form of creation, and I am unique. I'm not like anybody else. And even though my brothers died of cancer, I don't have to die of cancer. And I said to myself, there are thousands of people out there who have been diagnosed um, of even the same kind of cancer. And even on the day that I was given my diagnosis, I'm sure there were many other people as well. But the way they are going to go about their treatment or their journey with cancer is going to be unique to them. So it's important for me to focus on my own unique identity and believe that there is a reason other than death why this cancer is visiting me at this time. And of course, I had chosen to look at everything as positively as possible. So whenever I found something that implied some positivity, like maybe God wants me to learn a lesson about life and growing and how I can become a better person, then that is unique to me because He created me as a unique individual. He is walking with me on this journey and is aware each and every day of what's going on in my life. And I believe He is protecting me, He's taking care of me, even if I have been diagnosed with cancer. It's not a punishment from God. Maybe it's a part of my growth. So it was from that moment I also began to realize that challenges come into your life not so much to destroy you, but to help you to grow. And it helped me to look more positively, as it were, on my situation. It was really a very powerful experience in that sense.
So you realize that you are unique. And that was a very important one, that there's no one else like you. And you explain in your book that you know yourself the best. So you are the most equipped to actually help yourself because the doctor doesn't know you as well as you do. Your wife doesn't even know you as well as you do, even though you had been partners and married for many decades. But you yourself knew you the best and how to approach this diagnosis and how to go about treating yourself. And I think that's what I took out from that chapter, that you're unique, that you are um, part of God because you were quite a religious man, but also that you had the most knowledge about yourself, your condition, your life history, that you yourself were the most equipped to help yourself. And that maybe started you on what to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's correct. Um, and then, of course, the next thing I looked at was, as you were saying earlier on, that my awareness of the fact that um, at first I had a lot of expectations about what people should do for me because essentially I think I was projecting initially the picture of being a victim, you know, that I needed sympathy, I needed help, you know, people should feel sorry for me. And I think I'd probably grown up with that kind of mindset uh, for many, many years. So whenever I experienced a challenging situation, I would expect people to sympathize with me. And of course, even as kids, when you make a mistake at school, you are looking for a way of getting the teacher or somebody in authority to feel sorry for you. So I realized I had to kind of uh, find my way out of that victim kind of mentality, feeling sorry for myself. And here I am. Fortunately for me, I never stopped going to work, even though I was going through cancer treatment and during that period. Um, but I felt very lonely at times at the very beginning. And it was when I realized that even my wife is not available and she's got a very good reason for not being available for me. So, who really is responsible for my journey as I fight this big challenge that has come into my life? And that's when I had another kind of revelation, or um, what you call it, a bulb going on in my mind. Realizing that, well, in fact, I was looking at the mirror in the bathroom, asking myself that. And then I was looking at this face in the mirror, and that's when it clicked. And I said, well, there is my best friend. There is the person who is responsible. There is the person who is in charge. In any case, as a unique person, who better than myself to be able to look for solutions, to have conversations with God about my situation, and to realize that other people, just like me, have got their own issues, they've got their own challenges, and therefore it's me who is responsible, taking 100% responsibility for my journey, whether it's a journey of joy or a journey of challenges like where I am now. I have to take 100% responsibility. And of course, I am my own best friend. So that's when that second chapter of the book came in. I am my own best friend.
That's brilliant, brilliant. And you then decided to embrace your beauty and magnificence and find that you have a purpose in this life. I think, I mean, I don't know your whole life story, but just from hearing what you've gone through with this prostate cancer and how you came through it, I really think that was a huge purpose that you had in this life, that you can share the story with millions of other people who are getting diagnosed with cancer. That is an amazing purpose that you have brought to this planet to teach people that if you're diagnosed with cancer, it's not a nail in your coffin. It's a challenge that you can overcome, and you've proven you can overcome it by changing your mindset. And you've written a story, and it's been 15 years now that the cancer is in remission. I believe that is a purpose. Maybe you didn't know it at the time, but from hearing your story and how many people are going to watch this podcast and share it with people that need it, I really strongly believe that you're going to be inspiration for people who have this type of diagnosis, um, or some type of challenge in their future. But let's talk about what treatments you did. What kind of treatment protocol did you decide on? I mean, I'm sure the doctor from the hospital, he probably recommended chemotherapy, or they do radiation treatment, or maybe they have some pharmaceutical drugs that they started giving you. But how did you decide and figure out what kind of treatment to follow? Because this is new to you, right? And you have to listen to the experts.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for me, the reason why we'd gone to Australia was that my wife was going to study natural health. So she was almost done with her degree in Western herbal medicine, nutrition, and also reflexology. Um, and so when we were discussing my situation with her, um, she suggested that I think let's be as broad as possible, as holistic as possible, um, in approaching your treatment program. Let's seek um, advice, interventions from both the natural health side and also the conventional health. And so I ended up consulting. Of course, I couldn't consult her um, because she's my wife anyway. So I had to consult a naturopath, a homeopath, and an integrative doctor who was more on the natural side, but he was also a conventional doctor. And and then on the conventional side, I had, of course, my oncologist, my urologist, and my family doctor. And then eventually, later on, when I chose to go through radiation, I had my radiologist that I was also working with. And so for the treatment itself, when I had conversations with my um, natural health experts, you know, their advice was that um, let's use this approach. And they were sure that the conventional health people were going to agree to that. That initially I work with them as the natural health experts, and we strengthen my immunity, we strengthen my body physically, my energy, um, and for as long as we could, maybe for a year, they suggested. And then after that, whether I was going to choose chemotherapy or radiation therapy or go for a procedure or whatever, then my body would be ready for those interventions. Even psychologically as well, I'll probably be ready for those interventions rather than having them come in right at the beginning. Because the natural health aspect included quite a lot as well. My lifestyle, the food that I was eating, a lot changed in that area in as far as food was concerned. Um, because, for instance, I had to stop eating uh, the commercial beef and the commercial chicken because they convinced me that, you know, the way that these chickens are raised and also the cattle for the beef, they were now using a lot of these external interventions like hormones and steroids to get these to grow so that they can, of course, feed an ever growing population. So if I ingested these food items into my body, I would also be taking in some of those remnants of the steroids and whatnot, and I would be feeding the cancer cells in my body. And so I was convinced about that. So I stopped taking commercial beef and chicken. In fact, I focused, in as far as my protein was concerned, on the on beans and fish quite a lot, and of course other organic meats like game, um, and even chicken that I was sure the chickens were raised in a natural way. They were running around and they were purely organic. And so my diet changed very significantly. And of course, they emphasized that my lifestyle in terms of exercise was very important. Um, um, and also the fact that I had to use a lot of herbal teas, infusions, that kind of thing to keep myself as healthy and to help boost my immunity as much as possible. So that was the natural health. And of course, I used a lot of supplements as well. I also used a lot of vitamins and minerals. And sure enough, 12 months later, I was really feeling so strong, so well, that I was now ready for the conventional side of my treatment. Um, and so I ended up choosing radiation therapy. I said no to chemotherapy. I said no to a procedure. They talked about removing the prostate. And I said no, I wasn't prepared to do that. And I preferred at the end to go for radiation therapy and what they called hormonal therapy. Um, and so that came the last 6 months after working with the natural health experts. And so 18 months later, in September 2012, I went for tests and the cancer had gone into remission. And so you can imagine the relief, you can imagine the excitement, the celebration, I had my life back, and that inspired me even more to work on my book so that I would make sure that my full story, especially as far as my mindset was concerned, was going to be told and the world would know what happened. And of course, that I also had a very strong belief in the power of the mind, that the mind was absolutely a powerful tool, because while I was going through all those treatment processes, I was also working on my mind. And I could feel I was getting more and more positive, inspired, energetic, in as far as my um, thinking was concerned, to the extent that because I used to see my family doctor quite a lot when I was going through this. I think it was once every 2 weeks. And I remember at one time I went to see her and we got chatting, we got talking. And then she said to me, I've observed that um, in the last few months, you are coming in here, you have cancer, and I'm supposed to be motivating you, cheering you up. But I find that you're actually cheering me up more than anything else, because I'm coming from my home, I've got my own challenges, and you share all those things with me. And in the end, by the time we're done, I feel so positive. I feel so encouraged. I feel so inspired. And so, in fact, she actually thanked me for that and said, "Well, whatever you're doing, keep on doing it."
That is so inspirational, because in my life, I've had a lot of family members who've had cancer, and just two of them came to my mind. There was an uncle of mine in the early 2000s, I think it was 2001 or 2002, he got diagnosed with liver cancer. And he mentally could not handle that diagnosis, and he became immediately so depressed. despondent, victimhood, that victim mentality that you explained. He adopted that fully. He did choose to go and get chemotherapy, but I think he only did 2 chemotherapies. Like, he died very soon after the diagnosis, like just a few months. I think it was within 4 to 6 months after the initial diagnosis that he passed away. It was so sudden. He was still a very young man. He had 3 beautiful children, beautiful wife at the time. But he just could not get out of that victim mentality, and then, why did God do this to me? And he did just a handful of chemotherapy sessions and passed away. And then I'm thinking of my wife's mother. My wife's mother in 2015, I think she got diagnosed with a kidney and ureter cancer. And it was also quite advanced. I think it was stage 3 or 4. And the doctors immediately suggested, we have to cut out the kidney and we have to cut out the ureter. That's all been infected with the cancer. So she immediately went for that operation. And then right after that, she started doing chemotherapy, because that's what the doctors advised. And she spent 18 months doing chemotherapy. She would go, I think it was twice a month. They had to travel to the hospital. You'd sit on the chemo drips. They inject you and you sit on the drips for a few hours. But her mindset was also like a victim mindset, like, oh, woe is me, I'm so unlucky. And I'm just surprised that the doctors never advised these 2 examples that I'm giving. They never advised them to boost their immunity, to change your nutrition. Look at what you're eating. Try eat more natural food. Stop eating contaminated meat and contaminated processed foods. Start eating more foods that are giving you the nutrients and vitamins you need to boost your immunity system, because your immunity is the best thing to help you fight the cancer. They did not advise any of that. They said, we're going to operate and then we're going to do chemotherapy. Anyway, 18 months later, my mother-in-law was cured of cancer, or the cancer was in remission. But 2 years later, she got cancer in a different part of her body. And she died from that in 2020, I think it was. So I just really like how you approached fixing your body first, getting your immunity strong, changing your nutrition, changing your lifestyle, exercising. And the mindset was the first thing that changed, but you had to make a lot of other changes in your life to be able to defeat the cancer. And the conventional radiation was sort of the last piece of the puzzle on your journey, right? The first piece was your mindset change. The second few pieces was your nutrition, lifestyle. And then you said you were taking supplements, vitamins, herbal teas, herbal medicines, all of these things to get yourself strong. And then the final piece was the radiation. And I can see my other 2 examples of family members I have, they're dead. They passed away very quickly and made a lot of money, I must admit, for the medical system. I mean, my mother-in-law had an initial operation where they cut out her kidney and ureter. She did 18 months of chemotherapy. Then 2 years later, she got cancer again in the intestine, another operation. Then she spent, I think it was 2 weeks in intensive care unit before she passed away. So millions and millions and millions of rands that they made, instead of convincing her to boost her own immune system and get healthy and change your diet. They did none of that. And yeah, I mean, I think that you're an inspiration really for people that, yes, the conventional method can work, but you need to get your body in the right state first for the conventional method to help you on the last piece. Is that a good summary, do you think, of maybe an example of people who've struggled with the cancer diagnosis and passed away even though they've had the conventional treatment, and yourself who has sort of had a mixed treatment?
Yeah, I think that's That's a very good summary. And of course, I think fortunately more and more doctors these days are also talking about the importance of nutrition. Although it's not highlighted as much as, of course, a person like me feels it should be, but they're talking about nutrition as well. And they're also even talking about, I've recently had conversations with some doctors who were saying that it's very important for our patients to also realize that their mind is a very key factor in their treatment. And some of them have invited me. I've spoken to online to some people after being invited to explain how, in as far as my journey was concerned, my mindset played a part in my in my um, in my getting better, in my regaining my health. Um, so yes, there's um, that glimmer of hope that in the conventional world uh, there's going to be more of actually wanting to integrate the way that the uh, wellness is approached from both the conventional and the natural, so that the patients can gain maximum benefit from the combination of both sides. But I have no doubt that, as you have indicated, that it's so important that the emphasis be placed on lifestyle, because lifestyle also in a way relates to the causes of this cancer, how it came to find itself dominating whatever part of your body we are talking about. Um, then when you are talking about cause, when you are focusing on cause, then you've got a better chance of not only helping to overcome the challenge, but also making people aware of the fact that um, it's not so much about just finding a cure for something. It's about more. It's more about where are you beginning? How are you living? What is your lifestyle? That kind of thing. How much are you taking care of yourself in as far as what you eat is concerned, and also in as far as exercise and that kind of thing is concerned, um, so that the mentality of, no, I don't want to say patients, but of people in general is being driven by the fact that I have a responsibility about my health, and consciously being aware and asking yourself, am I doing the best that I can to ensure that I'm living a healthy life? I know that many people think that way, but obviously it's not enough. It's more people just they go on with life, and then all of a sudden something happens. And then of course they are now aware of the fact that I should have done this, I should have done that. So that awareness of the fact that each one of us has this responsibility to ensure that our lifestyle is commensurate with wellness, real wellness, mental wellness, physical wellness, um, and wellness in every sense of the word.
So, David, maybe you can tell us what changes did you make to your lifestyle? And I'm guessing that you kept these changes even after your cancer went into remission. I assume that that just became part of your lifestyle. So you mentioned nutrition. You mentioned that you cut out the commercial chicken and beef, and you moved to more organic meat, fish, and eating beans. But maybe tell us about the nutrition first, like what kind of nutrition you started doing to, or what started nutrition you started to eat. Then the exercise, you mentioned exercise, and I believe that's very important because it helps to get the blood flowing. It helps your cells to grow more mitochondria within them. It helps with the drainage of toxins in your body. And then you mentioned herbal teas, supplements, vitamins, all of that type of stuff. I think it'll be very useful for our listeners to understand a bit more of detail about that, because I really believe that is the first thing we should tackle before we start, going for conventional treatment.
Um, yeah, I mean, one aspect of lifestyle, in as far as food is concerned, for me, what I have come um, to follow regularly, consistently, is uh, a kind of a diet regime, is the fact that I have moved away. Besides, of course, the the commercial beef and chicken that I mentioned earlier on, is that I don't take sugar at all anymore, because I was also convinced that definitely the more sugar you take in, the more you're actually feeding those cancer cells if you have been diagnosed with cancer. And so I don't take sugar at all in my tea. I don't take fizzy drinks. I used to be tempted to sometimes take those juices, but I found that many of them had a lot of sugar as well. So I prefer juices which are blended, you know, mix up tomatoes and carrots and even apples or whatever, and have some very natural juice. Um, I found that extremely healthy and helpful. And also, I take porridge in the morning consistently, but focus mainly on sorghum. Sorghum is my porridge mostly. I take it in many forms, um, but it's my porridge. There is some which is kind of pre-prepared with vitamins and minerals, which we call yam pepper, and I take that quite consistently. And also fermented coarse sorghum or coarse mabele. I take that quite often as porridge in the morning, very useful. And then I also, of course, eat pap, and I've completely avoided taking white mealie meal, maize mealie meal, which is white. Um, and I once again focus on sorghum and also millet, finger millet, you know. Um, I've seen it. I found that you find it in some Indian shops, but I think they call it ragi. Um, but the one that I love most is the the um, the finger millet that's grown here in Africa, and That's also a very key part of my carbohydrate intake. Um, and then, as I mentioned earlier on, drink tea as often as possible, herbal teas, all varieties of herbal teas, um, and I don't know what else would you want to know food wise.
Vegetables? Did you start eating more vegetables in your diet?
Yes, oh yes, oh yes. In fact, right from the time that I got diagnosed with cancer, the emphasis from my natural health consultants was that I should take a lot of vegetables. And so vegetables is a key part of my diet. I never eat my dinner or my lunch without vegetables. So vegetables, green vegetables, um, favorite is spinach and also kale, um, and also cabbage. I love cabbage as well. Um, and with all these varieties of vegetables, sometimes using peanut butter, um, very nutritious and very delicious as well. So vegetables, absolutely yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. Very, very
And your fruit intake? Did you start eating a variety of fruits?
yes. I do eat a variety of fruits. I eat a lot of fruits. Um, but of course, the challenge these days with fruit is that we know once again as a result of the growers trying to make sure that they meet the needs of this growing market. Um, I found that fruits are harvested before they are ripe in many cases. Because I'm sure you've had the experience of going to this fruit shop and finding green bananas. And so I understand now that um, many of these fruits are harvested while they are green. And for a fruit to be able to give you the nutrition, the full nutrition that your body should be getting from the fruit, that fruit has to be plucked from the tree, from the vine, when it is ripened. When it is ripened. But that's not happening anymore. So I know I eat fruit, yes, but I'm aware of the fact that I'm not getting the amount of nutrition I should be getting from these fruits, unfortunately. But in many cases, you really have no choice. You have to eat that and hope that there is some nutrition from these fruits. Because I remember also reading somewhere that I think in 1952, um, a lady, say a 20-year-old lady, would get enough vitamin E from a peach, right? I think it was 2 peaches a day, right? In 1950, 54, 53, somewhere there. But today, the same person, the same aged person, would need more than 50 peaches to get the same amount of vitamin E. So that's, I don't know, that said something to me about, yes, we've got fruits, but then are they organic? Do they have the full nutrition? Were they plucked off the trees or the vine when they were ripened? Or they had to be taken somewhere, put in there, and of course, some ripening gas sprayed in there when they were ready to go to the market, and then giving the appearance of ripening. But I guess that's the direction we are going. That's where we are. But that gets me a bit cautious about um, about fruit.
So I want to comment on that because I just had a podcast last week. It was published on my channel, I think a week or two ago, about good farming practices. And we spoke with Gary Jackson, who's the founder of Jackson's Real Food Market. And he was talking, and I've had a previous podcast again as well with Gary. He's come to a couple of my wellness events. So I've uh, known Gary now for a couple of years, and he always talks about nutrient density of the food. The problem with the commercial farmers, the mainstream farmers, they first of all they plant like a single crop usually for fruits and vegetables. They just plant one single crop on a huge acre of land. They pump the soil with fertilizers. They also plow the soil, which is apparently very bad for the soil, kills the root structure and the communication network and hurts the biome in the soil. Then on top of that, they spray the crops with pesticides. So Gary Jackson in his store, the farmers that he only chooses regenerative farmers or farmers who do not use any fertilizer, any external fertilizer. They only use natural fertilizer. They make their own compost on the farm. They don't use any pesticide. They grow multi-crop plants um, on their land. So they grow a variety of different crops. And he's found that the nutrient density of those fruits and vegetables is much higher than a conventional fruit and vegetable. So you'd probably find a peach from Gary Jackson's store is equivalent to the peach from 1950 that is full of vitamin E because it's got so much more nutrients, because the soil is so much richer. There's a variety of plants. There's no pesticides. There's no artificial fertilizer. So the plant actually can grow to have full nutrients. And I think that's what we were talking about in our podcast. We want people to start thinking about nutrient density of food. What nutrient is there in the food? Stop just looking at a peach is the same peach that I get from the supermarket or wherever. A peach is not a peach. There are difference in peaches. What's really important is how much nutrients are in there, what type of nutrients, what nutrients that are useful for your body. And we're trying to come up with a nutrient density of food because that's how people should actually buy. If you see a peach from the supermarket is 1 rand and you see a peach at Gary Jackson's shop is 2 rand, you might think, oh, the supermarket peach is cheaper. But you need to eat 50 of these supermarket peaches to get the same number of nutrients as one peach from Gary Jackson's shop. So which peach is actually cheaper? Because nutrients are what's important, right? So I'm glad that you came to that realization. I've also slowly come to that realization after speaking to these kind of people, getting them on my podcast and sharing this information and knowledge. But yeah, nutrient density is what's really important. He spoke about the same with the meat as well. The farmers that have caged chickens or that have feedlot livestock, cows, feedlot sheep and goats, the nutrient density of the meat is so much lower than a regenerative farmer who allows their goats and sheep and cows and chickens to roam and eat a variety of different grasses. He even explained, that those farmers who have regenerative practices, they don't have vets. They barely use a vet. The vet doesn't even come to the farm ever because the animal's immunity is so strong, the animals don't really get sick. And you wait until the animal is at an old age before you actually kill the animal for meat. Whereas the conventional farm, they're trying to get that animal fattened up as quickly as possible. You're actually eating baby chickens, right? In 6 weeks, that chicken is from hatching till when it's killed to be sold as meat is 6 weeks. You're basically eating a baby chicken. And same for the cows. They get these cows fattened up so quickly, like in 1 or 2 years, the cow is ready to be slaughtered at the abattoirs. You're eating a baby cow. Actually, it just happens to be so big and fat because they pumped it with hormones and so many things. So yeah, nutrient density is so important. I'm glad you mentioned that. I wanted to ask about your exercise regime because you mentioned that a few times that exercise was also very important in your recovery, and I'm guessing you're still practicing and doing some of those exercise routines now.
Well, I mean, my most favorite exercise is walking. I consistently walk each and every day, um, except when it's raining like today. But each and every day, I definitely take a walk because I remember my natural path when I was going through my cancer treatment was emphasizing to me that, David, you must remember that 50% of your healing comes from exercise. So you must be consistent in your exercise. Um, and then I've recently also learned how to hula hoop, to use the hula hoop because I got to understand. I got convinced by this lady who does hula hoop that it's got so many benefits in terms of um, exercise, if you've got back issues, um, and also in terms of even your thinking, giving yourself more focus mentally. The hula hoop is something that I've also, so I've made some bit of investment in the hula hoop as well. and and I play golf every now and then, but the most consistent thing is my walk, my daily walk.
And then you mentioned supplements and vitamins that you were taking in the beginning. Are you still taking supplements and vitamins now today? Has it been part of your lifestyle?
Yes, it has become part of my lifestyle. In fact, ever since that time, I've consistently and I've been, of course, been very careful as to what kind of supplements, what kind of vitamins and minerals am I taking, and I have been inclined. Of course, my wife has played a key part in helping me to stay alert there and looking for uh, supplements that are coming from companies or organizations that are also conscious of where are they getting their raw material for the supplements that they make. Um, and so I found um, a few companies or organizations that have got some very reputable, some very, I would say, even effective in terms of you take the supplement and you actually feel the difference after a few days in terms of either energy, in terms of either um, uh, dealing with whatever. I mean, they don't necessarily cure, but they kind of help your body to fight for itself. And um, that has been the most interesting development has been in the area of glyconutrients, which um, I found after doing some research as well on that they play a very key part in helping to build my immune system, in helping my cells to communicate and and I definitely have had situations where I've used those supplements, and it has made a big difference for me.
That's brilliant, because I'm glad you touched on the supplement being or spending that much effort to find good quality supplements from companies who are making good quality supplements. Because I've also seen in my practice, a lot of people just want to take the supplements and the vitamins, but sometimes those supplements, even though they might have that nutrient you want, it might just go into your gut and go straight out because it doesn't get absorbed into your blood system, or it might be in the wrong format that your body will struggle to use it. So the most important thing for supplements and vitamins that you take is it needs to be bioavailable, which means that your body can use it and it's in the right format that the body can use easily. And that's really important. So many supplements, I think, on the market at the moment are not bioavailable. So you might be taking the supplement thinking like, oh, I'm getting the supplement in my body, but it's not in the correct format for your body to use. So it's actually a bit useless. So I'm glad you also mentioned that, and importance of doing the research to find good quality supplements that your body can actually make use of.
Yeah, in fact, absorption is very key, because your body has to be able to absorb these supplements so that they can be put into full use by your body, rather than you flushing out 90% of the nutrients in those supplements. What's the point? So absorption, very key in supplements.
That's brilliant. So, David, we have sort of come to the end of our podcast. I think this was an amazing talk. I think it's going to be inspirational for so many people. And just to highlight again to the viewers, the approach that David took, first of all, was to change his mind, to get out of the fear that he was doomed to die, to get out of that depression victim mentality, to take charge of his life. And then, secondly, which I found really useful, is he changed his lifestyle to boost his immunity, to strengthen his body, to strengthen his cells so he could fight the cancer. Nutrition, exercise, herbal teas, and good quality supplements. So that was really the key for me, and I hope that's the message people can take. Cancer can be beaten if you have the right mindset and you alter your lifestyle in the right way, and then the conventional chemotherapy, radiation, or whatever it is they suggest can be the final piece to help you over the line. I would even recommend, because I'm a homeopath myself, I would recommend homeopathic remedies um, to help with the treatment. You know, I've also got the energy medicines and the energy technologies that can also help with treating illnesses. But I love this approach, and this is so much inspiration because so many people are getting diagnosed with cancer these days. And it's like David said, it's not a death contract. It's not your nail in your coffin, like we say. 15 years now, David, you have been cancer free from that ominous day back in 2011. So almost 15 years. I mean, it's truly amazing. And I think that cancer diagnosis has extended your life because you've now made these lifestyle changes, which are part of your life now. These last 15 years, you have been eating a good nutrition, a good diet, nutrient full diet. You have been exercising. So that diagnosis has actually extended your life because it's made you change your life in a way that's going to lengthen your life, prolong your life and quality of life as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and perhaps I think as a last word from me as well, um, I think as part of the mindset, uh, the growth of your mindset and using your mindset to be able to deal with your challenges, illness especially, and whatever other challenges, I found that the element of gratitude has been key and continues for me to be key, um, because when I began to look for things to be grateful for, even at that time when I was going through this huge, scary cancer journey, I found that as soon as I began to think of what am I grateful for, what can I be grateful for right now, and even struggle to find the first thing, and then having found that first thing, it led to another. And I found myself, and I still find myself really, with such an abundance of things to be grateful for, because I've made that choice to say to myself, what blessing can I see in my life? What can I be grateful for? Just one thing for a start, but it always opens up a whole list of things that I should be grateful for, and I begin to be grateful for, and it changes my outlook, my mindset, my attitude completely.
And you've actually listed it as key number 8 in your book. You mentioned, I choose an attitude of gratitude. So, ladies and gentlemen, go check out the book. It is called Winning Attitudes. I am going to leave a link to the book. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at a couple of other places. You can also contact David if you need to get yourself a copy. A really, really wonderful book. Anyone that has got cancer, or you know someone that's got cancer, this book can really, really change their life, as you can see in David's case. So we really appreciate your time, David. You want to say something else before we close?
Yes, it's related to the book. When you are searching for the book, actually, Winning Attitudes, there are many other. I mean, I found myself later that I was trying to compete with people like my my leadership guru John Maxwell. He also has a book called Winning Attitudes. But to differentiate his from mine, is that mine is Winning Attitudes in the face of adversity.
Yes, you're right. It's written there in very small letters. But I am going to leave a link below the video so you can easily find it. It's on Amazon and a few other places. But yes, Winning Attitudes in the Face of Adversity by David Pasipanodya. We are very grateful for your wisdom, your inspirational story, and your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deepak. Appreciate.
So, till next time, ciao for now.